theyeshiva.net.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Bruchim haboyim, b'shem Hashem, berachnuchem bebeis Hashem. Tzadik Tes, Amud Aleph, Tzadik Tes, column 1, or page 197. On top it says Bracha, middle of the Maimer, Mizmor Shir Chanukah Sabayis L'David. So, after the Balatanya contributed some space to explaining Mamalik Kalalman, and then to explaining Soivav Kalalman. In the previous class yesterday, Monday, he introduced that when you speak about Soivav Kalalman itself, which is called Keser, you have to understand that in Keser itself, there is what we call Arich Anpin, Aleph Aleph. Aleph Aleph is Arich Anpin, or sometimes they're just called Arich, which is just an abbreviation, and what we call Atik. And the difference is, both are Keser. In other words, it's not Mamalik Kalalman, we're talking about Soivav Kalalman, which is why it's called a Keser, which is, so to speak, above the body, above the head, the crown of the king. But Keser is the interface between absolute infinity, undefined infinity, and divine structure, also known as Atzilus or Spheres. And therefore, like every Memutza, like every intermediary, every interface, it must include both dimensions. If not, it can't serve as a bridge. It can't serve as a connector. It can't serve as an interface. That's what the Eitz Chaim says, that every Memutza must encompass both sides, so to speak, both sides of the bridge in order to be able to connect them. And that's why we speak in Keser. In Keser we speak about Arich and Atik. Arich is, so to speak, the lower dimension of Keser, or as he calls it, Roish V'Rishon L'Ne'et Salim. It's Keser as Soivav Kalalman, as the source of the spheres, that which encompasses all of them. That's Arich of Keser. And Atik of Keser is the deeper dimension. He calls it Pchina Tachtoina Shebema'atzil, which means the lowest dimension of the Ma'atzil, of the source, of the infinite source, because Keser must have both dimensions in order to be what it's supposed to be, which is creating that interface, that link, it's just a good word, interface, that link between, Teidei Maza interface, how do you say it in Hebrew? Huh? Yeah, scientists love it. So just the word itself.
It's basically a definition of how communication is going to happen.
Right.
The implementation is already implemented the process.
Right. So the communication happens through that interface, right? And so, the Atik is the Pchina Tachtoina Shebematzil.
Is that Malchus?
Huh? כך כתוב?
Whatever that means.
אוקיי. לא שמעתי, אוקיי. ממשק, אתה ידעת המילה? זה בביזנס משתמשים בה? ממשק, אוקיי.
Isn't Malchus that gives birth to the next world? Like you would see this to be a Shir.
Yeah, you're asking about Malchus, so the truth is that the Malchus of one world becomes the Keser for the next world.
Comes it gives birth to
it becomes the Keser of the next world. It's always that way. In other words, the lowest dimension of the previous world becomes the, so to speak, the mother of the new world. This you don't even call Makif. He calls it Makif L'Makif, because it's even beyond being a Makif. Because a Makif represents, as he puts it, there's a Makif, but there's a Shaykhis, there's a connection. The connection is in the Oifen of Makif. The relationship is an Oifen of Makif. In other words, I'm defined by the relationship. It's just the relationship is one that we call Makif, not Pnimi, which is a much more intense relationship, a higher relationship, more sublime relationship, a relationship of Ratzeh, not of Dibur, as explained earlier. But still, he's defined as a Makif. When you speak about the inner core of Keser, it's not defined as a Makif, so he calls it Makif, even Legabe Makif.
Computer science interface requires an architect. The implementations could be done by a developer. Well, the idea how it's all been channeled requires not. There's no such thing as interface built itself because there's nothing there.
Beautiful.
Some call intelligent design.
No, he's saying the interface requires always an architect, not just a developer. Oh, so yeah. So he continues inside. The line starts loy is a shayches. V'zeu k'may bias. In that sense, the metaphor for this is like a home. She'einoi b'chines makif hasamuch v'karev leguf k'may alavush. Unlike a garment which also surrounds the body. It's not like food, which is internalized within the body. The levush, the garment, as he said in the beginning of the Maimer, is a makif. It surrounds the body. It's not infused, it's not internalized in the guf. But the levush is a makif hasamuch. It's close to you. It even suits the shape of your physique. It has to suit your physique. You wear pants that are too long, and you'll trip on them. A levush, or too short, it won't fit. A levush it's a makif. The relationship between a garment and the body is one that we call makif, not pnimi. Unlike the food which becomes you. But nonetheless, it's samuch, it's close, v'karev. It's in close proximity to the body. That's a levush. When it comes to a bayis, raku makif rachayk megufa adam. A bayis, a home, sometimes you can have a home that's dalet ames al dalet ames, so it's pretty close to you. But that could be. But it's not defined by it. You can also live in a huge home, you don't know what to do with this space. The point of a home is a small or big. It's makif rachayk megufa adam. It's more remote from the body of the person living there. Also surrounds him. But the surrounding, the makif, is one that is far more remote. So that's why the bayis, the home, is a mashal, it's an illustration, it's an embodiment, it's the physical embodiment of a makif to a makif. V'hine neged gimel b'chinas haniskaris la'el nishtalshel u'lemata gimel b'chinas mazen u'levushim v'hechalos. Parallel, neged is parallel to these three aspects that we have been discussing. What three aspects? That's the way we define Hashem, godliness, as mamalik kalam. There's something even deeper which we define as soiviv kalam. And there's something even deeper which we won't even call soiviv, but we'll call it a makif, lemakif, not arich, but atik. So parallel to these three pchinas, these three aspects, nishtalshelu lemata, evolve, nishtalshelu lemata, evolve all the way down here. Also 3 dimensions in life. Mazain, food, levushim, garments, and hechalos. Hechalos means homes, chambers, place where, like a heichal. A heichal is a place like in the Beis Hamikdash. There was a place called a heichal. Heichal literally means it's koilel, it's a keli, it's a place where you live. Huh? Dwellings, yeah, hechalos. And those are the 3 components that are necessary for life, for basic living. As I said in the beginning of the Maimer, there's the food that we have to eat. Nutrition is what keeps the soul connected to the body and gives us our vitality and makes sure there could be a continuous life in the organism, and the organism needs its food. And then there's the levush, unique to the human being. Every animal has to eat. Even trees have to eat. They turn the sunlight into sugar. Every organism needs food, needs nutrition. The ant also needs to eat, and the bush has to eat. But then there is the human being also needs levushim, which is clothes, to protect us from the different elements, because our bodies are own, unlike animals, which develop often the epidermis, the skin, the hide, in order to protect them from either a scorching heat or a thunderstorm or frostbite. We need levushim in order to cover us and protect us. And then there's the 3rd component, which is shelter. A person needs to have a home where they live. These 3 components, and as he said, we see that food relatively is cheap. Clothes are more expensive than food. And a home is far more expensive than both of them together.
Why does it change from bias?
Hechalos. bias, why he says the word hechalus. I don't know why he says the word hechalus, not bias. I don't know. So these three components are not stam, it's just part of life. They are the physical manifestation of the three relationships that we have with the source of all life. V'chol davar hayoser gavoya. We have the principle that he said earlier. Anything that is higher, yiridase v'slapshusay lamata b'yoser, comes down actually into a lower place. There's a klal, kol hagavoya b'yoser, yored lamata b'yoser. That which is higher descends into a lower place, just like it's physical. Just like it's in the physical world. If a wall falls, so the higher stones, the stones on the top, will fall much further. Something is higher in a tree and it falls further. Kol hagavoya b'yoser, whatever is higher, will come down to a much lower space. So the same is true when it comes to these three components, as he will say. V'hinei mazain. What do we mean? What's the connection of these three and these three? He asked at the beginning of the Maimer that l'cha'ira, we see that food is cheap, relatively. Clothes are more expensive. Home is more expensive. You would think it should have been the other way around. Why? Food is mamash your life. You can't live without food. A person can't live without food. You must have food. And it becomes literally part of the person himself or herself. The food is digested. And digestion means that our bodies, our digestive system literally transforms. It cooks. It remakes the food into something that can be converted into the bloodstream of the person and feed the reserves of fat or all the aspects that the body breaks down the food and sends different parts of the food to different parts of the body based on its needs, the way the body perceives them, until the parts of the food that we call the psilus, that the body, the garbage, that the body has nothing to do with it, and it evacuates. It evacuates it. It rejects it. Yeah, that's also part of it. That's part of the process as well. It's called avoidus habirurim, as he puts it, to separate the oichel from the psilus. And in psilus itself, there's different levels. There's that which the body will still can hold on to, and then there's that which the body literally finds useless. But it's unbelievable how the body identifies every last aspect of the food that it could still use. And finally, when it sees literally no value, it lifts up its hands and it says, Rabbi say, Ad Kan, the rest of the garbage got to go somewhere else. It's a very big lesson in life. You can learn from your body a lot, how you have to deal with it. So, since that mamish becomes part of the person and he can't live without it, so you would think that should be the most expensive thing, because it's the most necessary, it's the most vital, versus garments, which obviously we need them, but they don't give us life. They're makif, they protect us, they surround us. Furthermore, a lavush, at least, is on your body. The house is more external. And yet the house is more expensive than everything. So, you'll answer very simply, which he says in the Maimer, that you can't compare. You can't compare. Because a meal is once a day or twice a day or 3 times a day. A lavush can last, as he puts it, for a year or more. And a bayis can last a lifetime. So it's not an investment for a day or for a few hours. It's an investment of a lifetime. That's true. In other words, if the mazain wouldn't have to be replenished, if you can eat once in your life, and that would do the trick, it would probably be expensive, the meal. And if you put on one garment, and that's it, you stay with it for 60 years, no. And a home, that's what a home is. A home, you could live in a home for 5 years, you could live in 10 years. Some people live in the same home literally their whole life. Certainly for many years, many years. That's what it's made for. So the endurance level is much more. You're buying what you don't buy a house 3 times a day. If you could, but you're in a good shape. You're in good shape. And obviously, you can add more. It has to do also with the basic economic structure of supply and demand. A house is large. A house needs a lot of materials, which are not so easy to obtain. It needs architects and contractors. There's obviously an avodah that's needed. Garments also. You need a supply of the materials, the fabrics that you're going to get for the garments. It has to be made. It requires man work and power and design and labor and so forth. So that also contributes to it. Food, obviously, also you need the materials. And you need a farmer, and you need a harvester, and you need a processor and a developer. But in terms of its size, and in terms of the amount of people needed, and in terms of what types of materials are needed, that also contributes, obviously, to the price. These are all the facts on the ground of how civilization and society develops. What the Baal HaTanya is trying to understand is that design itself was orchestrated by the source. Life is not random. The world is not a mistake. Why was a taka created in such a way that mazoin is consumed and gone, and a few hours later you're hungry again? Some people, a few minutes later, you're hungry again and you have to eat again. And levushim endure more, and a bias endures more. So that's where he started to explain that the shirish, you have to always go back to the root of the tree. You want to understand the tree, you have to study the roots of the tree. You want to understand the world, you have to study the roots. You have to understand the shirish. Always go back to the shirish, because the roots is where it all begins. The roots are the progenitors. When you don't go to the roots, you're looking at the symptoms. You're not looking at the source. It's like in medicine, you look at the external dimension of the body without examining the shirish of it, the root. And the deeper you go back into the roots, the more clarity, and most importantly, the more healing, because you're dealing with things on a root level, on a base level. When you deal with it on a basic level, that's where real change can happen. The more external treatments are also the more temporary treatments and the less authentic treatments. The same is true with all of life, right? When somebody has an emotional challenge or an emotional struggle, you can sometimes just identify the struggle as is from a very external point of view. And sometimes that helps. When I was in camp, there was a camp mother. So any illness that any child had, she always said, here is a lassenger and you'll feel better. Yeah. But my foot hurts. You know what a lassenger is? A candy. She had lassengers, infinite. Yeah, but my foot is bleeding. Here is a lassenger and you'll feel better. Okay. Today it's Tylenol. But the point is, you can treat something, right? And sometimes there'll be a temporary solution. But if you go to the shirish, when you go to the root, there's an expression in Tanya, Ein hadinim nimtakim ela b'sharshan. Right? The sweet, it comes from already earlier Makabalim. All the hamtakas hadinim, the sweetness of dinim is always when you go back to the shirish. When you go back to the source, that's where you'll find all the dysfunctions, all the little movements that created it. Right? A lot of our emotional experiences in life are really based on little tiny dynamics that happened years ago, but we're not conscious of them. When you can go back there, so then when you go to the shirish, first of all, you see it clearly, and over there, you see it from the holistic perspective. You see the whole picture, so you can deal with it in a much more powerful way. So the same is true with everything in life. That's why he says, if you want to understand these things, you have to go back to the shirish of it. And the shirish of it is gar lamaila, very, very high, very deep. And that's what he starts saying, that these three things, you have in olam, and you have shana, and you have nefesh, and you have in the world, and you have in Torah, and you have in mitzvahs. And that's how he started it. There's mamala kalalman, which is koyach hapayel benifel. Then there's soiv of kalalman, which is makif. And now we learned that there's atik, there's soiv of lis, soiv of makif lamakif. And that's why you have three things in this world. Mazoin, levushim, and bias, all staples of life. They're not just trivial things. They are the essential components that a person requires in order to be able to live a functional, not just a functional, to be able to live a life. So he starts explaining.
In general, we've had this idea of color, for nofel, yosir, lamata, etc., things which are mishtalshel. They're mishtalshel from other things, like higher animals, mishtalshel, lower animals. Here he's talking about mishtalshelis from God himself. Sovev, makiv,
Yeah, enochaname.
God being mishtalshel. He's saying,
well,
mamali,
I wouldn't say God, divine energy, let's call divine energy, the chiyus of Hashem, the life force, the vitality, divine energy.
Isn't it the opposite? This is all about man. It just defines three interfaces for man. So he defined man to live, he needs to eat food. To interact with others, man to man, he needs clothes. And to interact with men in society, he needs wives. So it's still
interact with other people.
You do. Mostly.
Sweden, they don't prefer.
Sweden maybe don't need clothes, but
No, I'm saying you need clothes, not for other people, yourself.
Well, there's the element of clothes as sneers, you mean? That too, yeah. He
That's how other people see protection.
huh?
You mentioned protection.
And protection. Cold or even, yeah. It also protects from heat. Sunburn, scorching heat, yeah. V'hinei mazayin shehu chiyus pnimi nimshach b'chinas mamala kol alman. Mazayin, food. What is food? Food is mamish, the physical manifestation of mamala kol alman. The best mashal for mamala kol alman is mazon. Because what is mazon? The whole inyan of mazon is it becomes you. It's not anymore two separate things. You don't walk around with food in your system. Once the body does its work, the food literally became part of you. You can't recognize anymore, oh, that's the potato in my system, that's the vegetable, that's the cucumber, that's the fruit. I mean, sometimes if you eat real garbage, you can identify it in the system because it remains distinct and separate. But true mazon, it becomes a chiyus pnimi, meaning it's completely internalized. It becomes the definition of the person's bloodstream, the definition of their life. So this is a manifestation of mamala kol alman. V'lachein yesh kama taimim v'kama gvanim. And that's why there is such diversity in foods. This is fascinating. There's such diversity in foods. Every food has its own unique flavor, its own unique tam, its own unique taste. We're not always sensitive to this diversity. I mean, we all know generally that a peach doesn't taste like a kiwi, and watermelon doesn't taste like cantaloupe, and an apple doesn't taste like an orange. But the diversity is an incredible thing. Because what are the materials, what are the nutrients that it has? You take a seed, so there's a seed, there's soil, there's water, air, and sunlight. And somehow that combination creates such an endless, well, not endless, but such an enormous diversity of different types of flavors and tastes that suit different taste buds. And he says, v'kama gvanin, and so many different colors. There's mar, there's bitter, and there's musik, sweet, chuli, etc., etc. How bitter and how sweet, and the interface between bitter and sweet, chuli. The details of food are huge, how divisible they are, how much diversity there is, how much differentiation there is. Every food has its individual personality. We know just in the world of grapes, right, how many types of wines there are. I mean, wine connoisseurs could sit 30, 40 years and explain to you literally how this little slight change of the atmosphere in the room creates a different experience of wine. I'm not a maven, but sometimes when I sit with wine connoisseurs, that's what they sound like. Yeah, that's what they sound like. And that's just one grape. That's one food. But in every food, you have all this diversity, both in terms of colors and in terms of taste and in terms of types, meaning the materials of it, the nutrients of it. And it's fascinating. It's all God's world. Marabu Masacha, yeah.
So the diversity of foods don't cause differences in people.
Oh, they do. Of course they do. Of course they do. Yeah, we have here a PhD in nutrition. Ask him. Do the different types of food affect people differently? Of course. Taste, color, design, of course, nutrients.
The person that changes the food into himself.
Some foods, will say, are good for you. Some food, the Rambam has an expression, Hilchos Deis, that some foods are poison for you. And certain bodies respond different ways. You want to give us a seminar a little bit? You want to give us the basic, what do you learn in 10 years? Give us enough paragraph.
The molecule of food is the keli is changing it into itself. It's not, there's two different people who eat the same food and they'll process it different ways. or eat different food, or if one person
Yeah.
eats different foods, he could process it the same way. It's not specifically based on which chayas is being given, unless.
No, every muzzin has a specific impact and influence. Yeah, yeah. I see people in the morning, they can eat cake, a whole cake. Some of us eat one piece of cake, we're in a bad mood already for the whole day.
Keli is more responsible for the change, like in the earth. By the malcolm, different earth causes different.
But here also, the oid is different. That's what he said. The muzzin is different. You'll see. Hainu shekol. I don't know what it means. Shekol is. Hainu. So it says v'dibu yischalkus protei amachalam. Hainu. Shekol heiskalalus hayut tzvidus. Chesed shebechesed, gvura shebegvura chuli. Because mamalik al-almin is always about endless diversity. Because when you speak about spheres, so the spheres are diverse, but each sphere encompasses all the others. So that creates so many different combinations. Because you'll have chesed, and as we explained, there's chesed of chesed, and there's gvura of gvura, but there's also gvura of chesed and chesed of gvura, and so on and so forth. So the 10 are not just 10. Right? The 10 become 100, because each of the 10 has 10, and those 10 become 1,000, because you'll have gvura shebechesed, and so on and so forth. It's endless. And therefore, you have so much diversity in creation. Because the divine energy of Mamalik al-Almin, it starts off with Asara Mamaris. But there's not only 10 things that exist in the world. Asara Mamaris are generic, they're general. But then you have the letters of the Asara Mamaris develop in so many different ways to create every nuance, detail that exists in all of the cosmos and the entire existence, physically and then in the spiritual worlds as well. And this is the reason that Amazon Yeshloi Kiloyin, that the mazon food gets consumed. Kiloyin means it seizes, it gets consumed, it gets subsumed in the body, and kiloyin, it ends. It's a certain amount of gas and fuel that allows the engine to run, but at some point you use up, it gets depleted. You use up and now you need more energy. And we know that the human body, the body takes the energy of the food, allocates it to those parts that need different parts of energy. I mean, the brain itself consumes an enormous amount of the energy. And then there's the other parts of the body that need energy. And what happens now? The gas is finished. You have to replenish it. It got depleted. Yeshloi kiloyin. What's the reason for this? Because it's me'or pnimi hamaluber shel mugbal b'kelim. Because since it's a type of that's a pnimi, it becomes internalized, manifested, and limited within the vessel. So therefore, the vessel contains it. The vessel uses it. It becomes completely one with it. That's why down here, that's why food is a type of thing that becomes completely unified with the human body, with the human organism, and it becomes his internal or her internal life, because its spiritual shayrish is p'chinas mamalik kalalmin, what we call koyach hapoyel benifel. The koyach of the poyel, the koyach of the creator, that is imprinted and constitutes the very definition and makeup and composition of the one who was created. And that's the reason. That's the reason it's cheaper. That's why it's cheaper. That's why you don't need the whole diversity of food in order to live. People like it, but you can, as the Mishnah says, you can have pascha reva. You can have dry bread for survival. In other words, what's important is that there is mazon. As the Mishnah says, a person can live with bread and salt. A person can also eat very many delicacies, constantly. The Gemara says about Rabbi and Antoninus. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Antoninus, the Roman emperor, that my olam loy paskum al shulchanam loy tznayin v'loy chazeres loy b'maisachama v'loy b'maisakshamim. In winter and in summer, from their tables never disappeared not radish and not lettuce, which was a unique delicacy at the time. It wasn't easy to obtain both in the summer and in the winter. Mipnei, but the point is sheshosh mebchinas koyach hapoel benif. The source of the food is koyach hapoel, the divine energy that comes into the nifl. It infuses the nifl. Shehu mebchinas gvul v'kli shemugbal b'keli. This type of oir we generally call oir hagvul. It's an oir of finiteness because it goes into the vessel. It has to match the vessel. It has to be suitable to the vessel. Because what is the definition of this light? The definition of this light is the light that is grasped by the vessel and experienced as the vessel. It defines the very experience of the vessel. So it's all about the vessel, it's all about Hakabal, it's all about finiteness. So the properties of Mamalik Kalalman, the way they're manifested in a physical world, will be manifested in the properties of food. However, when you speak about garments, Sharsham Lamaila, the source of garments from Abchinas Keser is rooted in what we call Keser, the crown, Roish L'Net Solim. What we explained yesterday was Arich, the head, the beginning, the genesis, the source of the Ne'et Solim. Ne'et Solim is all the emanations, the world of Atzilus, P'chinas Makiv. That energy which we don't call Pnimi, we call it Makiv. And that's why the way garments come into this world, what are they how are they expressed? How are they manifested? As makifim. They surround the person. It's not something that is converted into energy that is internalized in him. And they're extremely necessary for the person. Even in times when you have eaten and you don't have to eat anymore. But you still will need a garment. If it's in the winter, in the cold of winter, a person cannot survive if they're in the cold of winter without a garment. It's not like the mazoin. I ate, tomorrow I'll eat again, but now I'm good, the body has it. The lavush, he says, I need more because if it's winter, I need the malbush.
So what's the spiritual correlate of that? Because they're from a higher place,
Yeah,
necessary.
yeah, they're more necessary. Because it's the higher place, so it's more necessary, always. So it's more expensive because it's a much higher energy. Mamalik, so to speak, is a more finite energy. So in dollars and cents, it becomes cheaper. It also has endless diversity. It also becomes consumed and depleted because it's mugbal, it's limited. And anything that's limited has to be replenished. It feeds you, the oxygen is depleted, and you know it because the definition of the oil is that it's mugbal, it's finite. So all the properties of food represent the properties of Malak al-Alman. And it's cheaper because it's, so to speak, a lower oil, and you don't always need it. You need it often, but you don't always need it. You can have a meal and you're good to go. If you speak in terms of survival, a person can go for a while without food. And even according to the Derech HaYosher, when a person has prosperity and food, I don't eat every moment. You're not supposed to eat every moment. A garment you wear a whole day. And if it's winter, you need it a whole day. You need it. You can't survive without it. It can be dangerous without it. Or it's a scorching heat and you need to protect yourself from it. In Russia, they knew what winters were, like in Chicago. A winter was a winter. You need the lavush. Mazon, if you use the mazon every single moment, if you're eating every single moment, we know what that is. I mean, it's a horrible addiction. It's the opposite of life. A lavush, you don't say, okay, I wore already a garment for an hour. Today it's time to take off. It's time to take off the garment. So, we look at it, it's just the way how life works. What's the connection? But the point is everything has meaning in it. Because lavushim come from a much higher place, they're always necessary. And they're more expensive. It's more expensive because it's a higher light. It's makif, it's soiviv, and that's why physically it endures for longer. It doesn't get depleted in a few hours. Gone. Now you need a new meal. You can have the same coat, the same shirt for a year, for years. Lefi shesharsher l'mayla gavoya. Because in its shirish, it's higher. It's higher Yaisim in Mazin, Commotion is Boyalel, Shumer Mugbal Bekalim, which comes from the earth that's limited by the vessels. Mashakin Levushim Shashashim Ebchinas Saiviv. Levushim are rooted in Saiviv She'enei Mugbal Bekalim. It's not so limited it's not limited by the vessel. It's makif. V'lachein ein lo kilyon kol kach. That's why it will not get depleted so fast. Yes, he says kol kach, not so much, because after some time, the garments will also decompose or rot and become usable, become torn or shreds or rags, as we see. You wear the same pair of shoes for a while. Ultimately, it could take a couple of years. There'll be a killion. But ain't like kilya and kol kach. Why? Because what type of oir is it? It's not the oir that's mugbal, that becomes limited in the vessel. It represents something that's infinite, soiviv kalalmin, and hence it doesn't cease so fast. Then you have something else. Then you have batim, homes. Shehem rechoikim yosim megufot. These are even more remote from the body of the person. Not only is it not inside, it's not even on the outside of the body. It's not on the body at all. Shorsham l'mayla, the shirish of bias, hu mebchina tachtoina shebematzil. The shirish of bias is from what we called atik, the lowest dimension of the matzil, of the Ein Sof, which is the source beyond atzilus. Levushim are rooted in what he calls keser roish l'ne'et solim. Bias is from the Ma'atzil, which is beyond the Ne'et Solim, not those who receive from Atzilus, but the source, the Ma'atzil, the generator of Atzilus, that's what it's rooted in. Shulchinis Makif de Makif, Commotion is Boilel. This is what we call a Makif, even relative to Makif. V'lechein Iyar de Lamato. And since it's so high, the way it comes down is b'madrega yosa tachtoina. What do you build a home from? Avonim. Stones, offer, earth, pchinis doimim, which in the hierarchy of our planet, this is called doimim. Doimim means the lifeless matter, the inorganic matter, the silent matter. Doimim from the word vayidoim. Mashenkin levushim, hem pchinis tzomeach. Most garments, you don't create garments from rocks and earth, let's hope not. You make levushim from tzomeach. For example, the most common was pishton, which is cotton, linen, which grows, pishton. Why? Tzomeach is organic life. It's produce. It's that which grows. In the hierarchy of creation, tzomeach is above daima. But that's the point. Because bias is rooted in a higher place, so it's manifested in a lower dimension, avonim and offer, stone and earth. Levushim are also rooted in a high place, but not as high as bias. It comes down, not in such a low place, in Semeach, which is higher, which is where you get levushim from. And that's why down here too, the house is more remote from the human body, which means there's a greater distance. Even levushim have a distance relative to food. Food goes into you. Garments don't limit themselves that way. They don't restrict themselves to become part of your inner system, but they're part of your outer system. They're part of your external confinement. But a bias is not even part of your system. It's its own thing. It's beyond the body. Interesting. And in a way, you need them more than garments. What's pshat? A person can take off their clothes once in a while. True. We spoke, you don't eat every moment. You eat once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, and that's it. Genug. Garments, you can wear all day, but there's a point where a person takes off a lavush. You need it in the cold, yeah. And if you're sitting in a place where it's not so cold, right, you have a fireplace, you have an oven, whatever you do, a person needs to go to bathe, the person takes off their lavush. And there's other situations where a person takes off their garments, even according to halacha, where you have to take off your garments. Hu bevigdoi, he bevigdoi, yotzevi yitinsuv, etc. But when it comes to a bias, yosin etzrachim la'adam. Now, when he means more necessary, he doesn't mean that you're going to die without it. But he means ki ef shelader beloy bias afrega.
It's interesting that we speak of people,
The homeless.
We gave a title to people
Yes.
Speak of,
Right, the homeless.
their own category.
He's not saying about you need to be in the house.
No, you don't need to be in the house. You have to have a house. You have to have a house. That's what is fascinating. Person can't live without a home even for a moment. Yeah. Even if I'm outside, a person could be outside. You could take a walk, you could take a hike, and you could be out, but you're not homeless. You have a home. And it makes a big difference. It's not like we say, what's the difference between a person who has a home or doesn't have a home? It's a technical thing. It's not a technical thing. The Gemara says in Yevomis, Kol mi shein lebayis einoi adam. It's part of the tzir adam. What's the connection? Why? A person has a house. A lot of people are not home for very long times. They sit in the office a whole day and half the night. So they have a place. This person has a place to sleep, and this person has to find another place to sleep. This person sleeps in a place that they find, and this person goes home. It's not a technical thing of comfort, or you have an address, or you have a place that you're welcome, or you have a nice place. It's about identity. Kol mi she'ein lo bayis einei adam. It's a tzir adam. That every moment of life, you could be on a plane for 30 hours, but you have a home. You have a place called home. It's 24/7. To have a place called home is essential to identity.
What does it want to say? Isha Zudeso.
Yeah.
So what's the relationship between that and
We'll soon see. Very good question. The Gemara says in Shabbos about Rabbi Yossi, yeah? My oilam loy karasi ishti ela beisi. He used to call his wife his home. We'll soon see what that means. But it's connected, obviously. The Maimon will discuss that later. V'hu yoyse b'yoyker. And you can't estimate the value of the house is very expensive. And it wasn't even speaking about the real estate market of today in New York. But a house is very expensive. Even the houses in Shklov and Liozhna were expensive relative to clothes and food. By Chanukah Sabayas, yeah, of a fancy home of a wealthy Jew, the Pinchas Reizes. Umiskayim b'yoyse, and a house lives long, it endures. Why? All the same point. Nisha l'mayla mebchinas makav de makav. It's so expensive. Its price is so high because spiritually it represents something that is priceless, that doesn't even have a price tag. Thank God. Well, sometimes in Manhattan it also seems that way, that it's priceless. But thank God in the physical world it can't mamish be infinite. So you pay for a garage $500,000 if it's Brooklyn. And for another house, you pay millions of dollars. But what's the point? The point is that the yoker, the preciousness, is just a physical manifestation in dollars and cents of what you're dealing with. It's something the person can't live with, can't live without even for one moment, even if they're not there physically because you're outside. Because it's the makaf l'makaf that is always there, because it's a deeper place that you can't leave, even if it's not so conscious. And it's something that will not get depleted, never. I shouldn't say never, but it lives for many, it's designed to live for many, many, many years. Why? Because it's completely from the realm of infinity. So even legabe levushim, it's a much more deeper level of infinity that doesn't cease, doesn't get depleted, doesn't get used up. Infinity can't be depleted. Infinity doesn't have to be replenished. Finiteness, if you have a finite bank account, you have to replenish it, you get used up. Infinity doesn't get used up. Because the shayrish is makav the makav.
You said that houses usually are built from dim, inanimate.
He says avonim or offer.
And clothing usually from...
He says it's a meach. I mean, you have also clothing, obviously, from wool, fleece. Huh? What? Wool. From a keves, from a sheep.
In today's age...
That was more expensive, though. That was much more expensive.
In today's age, a lot of clothing comes from synthetic material.
Right, I know.
I mean, a higher madrega. This is not made of...
Your jacket is made from synthetic material. So you want to know if your jacket is a higher madrega.
Closer to the sheep on from sample.
the original begotten from Adam Chava were kostas?
Kostas Orva Yalbishem. Well, first it says Vayachgiru Ale Te'ena. The first thing they put on was leaves of a fig tree. That's the first thing they put on, which was tzemeach. Later it says Hashem made for them kosnus with an ayin, which is leather, yeah, which is of course from animals.
It's funny because they weren't even allowed to eat animals, but they're wearing the animals instead.
Well, God made for them kosnus so if He made it for them, He probably had some access to vegan oil.
I understand that, but
Or maybe synthetic. Ich weiß nicht. I don't know. I hear. Doesn't sound like he slaughtered an animal and made oil to make it. It could be it was that fabric, that material. And the Medrash says, "B'toirasu shel Reb Meir matzu kosnus oil with an aleph." In the Sefer Torah of Reb Meir, it said oil with an aleph, not with an ayin. Tunics of light, not of leather. The question, of course, is how could a Meir change a Sefer Torah? You change one letter, it's apostle Sefer Torah. Does it mean literal? Does it mean spiritual? So Balatanya explains that Reb Meir saw in Iyar. In Iyar with an ayin, he saw a light, he saw Iyar. But and then when you have food also. We have food from tzemeach, right? But the food of Shabbos and Yom Tov, the Gemara says, "Ein simcha ela b'basar," that's from Chai. So garments usually are from tzemeach, yeah. And food, mazon, doesn't even go down so low. Although you can eat tzemeach, some people eat only vegetables, but a lot of the staple foods, right, like lechem, of course, is tzemeach. But if you have basar or dogim, fish or meat or these types of things, comes from Chai, which is higher than tzemeach. So kol hagavoya b'yoser, the bias, which is rooted in the highest place, comes down all the way to daimim. Levushim comes down to tzemeach, and mazon comes down to Chai. Even though over there there's an interchangeable dynamic. But you don't build bottom from behemoths, and you don't build bottom from. You can have wood, I guess, eitzim. You can have lumber, You can have an oil, a tent, right? You're right. The Gemara discusses in Sukkah if you use a behemoth for one of the walls of the Sukkah, if it's kosher. You have a behemoth and you put it in the wall of a sukkah, you need a wall of a sukkah if it's kosher or not. But that's not the derech to build a sukkah or a home with behemoths.
you take leather, you take leather fabric.
Of course, you could. But the derech, the derech was, especially this Chanukah Sabayis, was a base chayma, so it was rough stones. So it's more permanent. You can't compare a house of Havonim to a house of cheaper, different materials. It's much more permanent. Okay, we'll be mafsik.
High school. My first year, freshman year of high school, Yeshiva University High School. So what, English literature, what do you teach in high school kids? So one of the first things I taught was a story called A Man Without a Country. Have you heard of it? Yeah. It was about some American citizen. I have to look it up, Google it. It's an American citizen who got very frustrated. I don't know what, I can't remember the tales. But at one point he uttered an oath in public address. I don't want to have anything to do with this country anymore. This country is horrible. And the Imam expelled him. I have to look it up. But the whole story for
A Man Without a Country.
Of not having but just interesting that the homeless became such like a cat.
Homeless. It's a shame tarya. You don't say a person without food, a person without clothes. A homeless man.
Also, but I still struggling with what we said before, that there's a hishtalshelus from divinity, that God himself is mishtalshel down to or are we saying it's just aspects of how we relate to God? The b'chinos.
Yeah, it's b'chinos, how we relate. Yeah, how we relate.
Because otherwise we always have the animals and the srafim on it.
Yeah.
It's really the concept of the relationship and how
Hashem is one. Mamale, Soivev, Atzmos, it's all one.
But it's how we relate. The b'china is what's mishtalshel.
It's different aspects of the divine light that are manifested in our experience and allow the world to operate on different levels and different layers of consciousness. Yeah. That's really, when we speak about levels, that's what we're talking about. It's not, there's three pieces in him. He'll look in the mirror, okay, this is Mamali, it's all one, it's indivisible. But it means in his interaction with the world, yeah. Let's put it this way. If a person is in a state of mamale, just to give you, if you pour water into a red cup, the water looks red. A green cup, it looks green. It looks the. The water is the same, right? But my retina is experiencing a different color. Now, the physics of it are also fascinating, but the mashal is not a bad mashal, because from the experience of Mamalik al-Almin, if somebody describes God, he'll describe him as Mamalik. From the experience of Soviv, he'll describe him as Soviv. And that's a genuine experience. And God allowed for godliness to be manifested and experienced this way. You understand what I'm saying? That's what creation is. That's what creation really is. Creation is allowing for the universe to experience itself and its creator in so many different ways.
And we spoke yesterday about Orech Anpin in Atik.
Yeah. Arich Anpin, yeah.
Orech Anpin, is that in contradistinction, for example, to Zeir Anpin?
Yeah. Zeir Anpin is Mamale. That's the Midas. Yeah, the 6 Midas, which is all part of Mamale. That's what he says. The spheres themselves are structures. They're Kalim. Arich Anpin is the long face. It's basically, and that's the point, Arich Anpin is the long face, Eir Anpin is the small face. So this becomes the interface. You know, sometimes you look at yourself in those mirrors and they stretch you or they diminish you. You have the whole face there, but it's in miniature form. So Arich Anpin is manifested in Eir Anpin in miniature form. Yeah.
Because Rabban often has this Kabbalistic one.
Zeir Anpin, yeah. The small face versus the large face. Arich Anpin, Zeir Anpin, yeah. Yeah, Hatzlacha Rabba. Dr. Michelle, when people come to you, nutrition, you have to tell them it's Mamalik Halal.
Sometimes I take it too now. Sometimes the ones who are holy, I take it too.
The study of food, in other words, is a very deep... The study of foods and its properties are really studies of are metaphors, illustrations of the diversity of divine energy. Mala ha'aretz kinyanecha.
There used to be a lot of alternative doctors who put people on water fasts.
Only water.
Up to 30 days, 40 days, as long as it was 90 days. And the siman, when they would start eating again, was when they would get hungry. And they had tremendous refuahs from a lot of different things.
Because they ate according to this real system of the body. And that means you eat when you're hungry. You don't eat when you're not hungry. You don't eat to distract yourself from stress and pain and you're tired and you're overwhelmed. But then you're abusing yourself and you're abusing the food. The food is really a source of energy to give vitality. It's the gas of the engine. And you use it when you need it to fill up. And when you squander it, you're both abusing the body and the food too.
Yeah, we've seen when we do cleanses.
In halacha, it says you bench till digestion. How do you know when you digested? So the klal that Chazal gave is when you become hungry again. Yeah. So in the halacha, they get into calculations when that is exactly the time. But the original definition of ikul, of digestion, is that you're not hungry. You're not hungry. Once you're hungry, once you're feeling hunger pangs, that means there is full digestion. So that definition is a very important definition.
A lot of people don't experience hunger.
They don't know. Because the prosperity of America is one that a lot of people don't have to ever experience it. Which is a major blessing, but it could be a challenge in terms of conscious awareness. They don't know what hunger is. Because they're already eating.
Friends that did 40-day juice fasts, they had big pimples come out on their face, toxins were coming out.
And it all got healed, yeah?
Oh yeah, it was toxins coming out.
They need a detox. They push it, need a detox.
And these were pretty clean people to begin with.
They need a detox, yeah. No, he's speaking about the juicing, the juicers.
Fasting is healthy. They say that once.
To a certain degree, huh?
It's healthy to fast.
Yeah. No, the body is a very serious vessel. It's the most magical vessel in our world. You have to treat it with derech eretz.
when there's not food being put in for a period of time, then the body starts consuming its tissues.
Tatavasta? Afilam versteht nicht. They ate what they needed to eat. It wasn't that they neglected their body. They respected their body.
Thank you.
Some people fast from Shabbos to Shabbos.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably,
And barely ate them.
yeah. There was a derech of some Gedolei Yisrael to dafka get into tiniest and sigufim. But that's a different derech. It wasn't the derech of Moshe to daf. They wanted dafka fast. Now is Bahab. Now is the time of Bahab, so a lot of people fast now after Pesach.
You take the Rabbi, yeah.
Very little. But he looked good. He looked healthy. It was a pella how little he ate, yeah. And slept also very. It's a pella.
You said that all the food comes from a different
Different source, yeah. Every food has its own heartiness, its own.
I always enjoy
Yeah.
conversations with real scientists when I ask them because the truth is that they can theorize about animal evolved and stuff like that, from mouse to bear or whatever. But how the fruit evolved? They have theories, but it's just very strong, very, very important.
As I told somebody, it's not just natural selection. You say the banana evolved from a grape, which, okay. It's
Why the grape evolved at all?
somehow this blind process of evolution that wasn't guided or intentional or had no intelligence behind it knew exactly what our bodies will need, not just in terms of life, but in terms of pleasure. And the exact balance, right? The bitterness and the sweetness and the tartiness of the peach and the apple and the orange and the grape and the watermelon. Like it all knew all this and exactly what it will need to live. And not just us. Every single animal, every mammal, every rodent, every insect, all part of the food chain. That's a genius that's beyond intelligence. And it was all blind. It's not just it evolved, things happened. It evolved in a way that it had in its cheshbon everything else on the planet.
Now interfaces like lactase developed.
So Mela, they tie them that in natural selection, the organism saw what works, and after millions of years, it developed those skills or limbs or shapes. But that's for itself. Here,
Somebody else developing for you.
it's for me. It's completely selfless. So this blind force of evolution is also selfless and altruistic. And he even shows me when he's ripe. When he becomes ripe, he changes colors. He's green a whole time, and suddenly he's ripe. He announces, "Hey, I'm ripe. Come take me." So therefore, I don't know. For me, it's not very convincing.
Not very intelligent.
I don't see the seichel in it.
Well, how did Rabbi Sachs deal with that issue? You said that one time that he had an approach which informed that last statement that you made, that it's not blind in some sense.
When you learn Yiddishkeit, you're learning good science. This is good science. You're not just learning religion. You're not learning religion. You're learning good science.
I understand. Science and philosophy were one.
Yeah.
It used to be a tool.
But I'm asking specifically, since you opened the door to it, unless you don't want to go there because we're going to learn Emor. When you made that remark about Rabbi Sachs, that because he had a certain mahalik.
Yeah.
I was just trying to understand what you meant by that. Because
I don't remember.
there's a steer between thinking that evolution is correct.
Yeah.
And what you just said, that evolution is not blind. I think you said blind.
I'm talking about the evolutionary theories that believe in completely no guided.
Altruistic in a same time.
Yep, it's amazing how the botanic, just the botanic world. I'm not talking about anything else.
How did he answer that? How did he answer that?
I don't know.
Okay, forgive me, I just.
No problem.
No, they have theories. They're laughable.
No,
They
it's
have
asking
theories.
specifically because he became the chief rabbi over there.
Yeah. No, it was actually a little while ago. I came home late at night from some event, and I was starving, and there was, I think, an apple on the counter, a pear, some fruit. And I made a brach, and I took a bite into it. It was like 2 a.m, and I had this epiphany. How did this fruit know? How did it figure out to produce such a type of taste that is wonderful? It was delicious, it was tasty, it was nutritious, and even its color was beautiful. It was appealing, right? And it was, and that's just for me, in the middle of the night. And my body, and it worked perfectly with my body. My body didn't say, "Ich, get out of here, today. What are you giving me toxins?" It was like this perfect match. So Mela, there's one fruit like that, a mistake. But you have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of plants with herbs and vegetables and fruits. And each one has its own unique nutrients that fits everybody, whether it's a human or an animal or an ant or a different rodent or insect. I mean, and everyone finds its place and its thing.
And it was not a natural selection that they were fighting for, being this tasty or that.
Right. So you want to say for their survival, they did extreme things. I got it. But it's not for their survival. The peach doesn't gain anything from it. And then it comes packaged. It comes packaged with a beautiful color. What's that for? Who needs the color? They say that flowers developed as flowers because they had to attract the bees. And bees love the colors and the aroma. So that way the bees will pollinate the flowers. So the flowers will be able to reproduce. So it's basically like a woman dressing up to attract attention. So that's for its self-preservation. It developed all of these things in order to attract the bees. So even to assume that was completely blind, and it just happens, I don't know how intelligent that is. Yeah, but that's for its own self-preservation. But here you have a whole world that developed for others. Knowing exactly how our brains work, what our bodies need. How did they know? Maybe the trees are brilliant about themselves. How do they know about me? I think I'm saying rational things, no? You're a scientist. And then somebody who says that there's a source behind it, there's a presence, there's a love there. There's a core, what we call God, is considered unintelligent. Meshuggah, indoctrinated, fundamentalist, stupid. Like if you have real science, you don't need it. I think if you have real science, you see it.
If the scientists would root for truth, they would see that there is more possibilities of intelligent design than none.
Yeah. At least, even if somebody can't come to the conclusion and say what there is, but where's the humility? With such astounding depth, you would expect humility. Humility means, you know what? Yeah, maybe there's much that we don't know. Maybe there's a mysterious force that we don't know, yeah. I maybe not be comfortable with it, but that I would respect. A humility.
Well, the truth is that
Most people eat this stuff, they say it's the way it is.
But the basis of you're right. But the basis of science is that you shouldn't say it's the way it is. You should ask, why is this the way it is? That's what we expect from a science. That's the basis of science. You don't say this is the way it is. You want to know why it's the way it is. What are the causes? That's what a scientist does.
The point is that it's not capable of replication. It's not subject to a blind test that gets that same result. And I think that's the part. I know a scientist, my daughter-in-law is a biomedical engineer. And mathematics is the ultimate in science because it's a language that's pure.
Right.
It's got purism.
Right.
And there's something impure. I think you have
right.
bifurcation. I mean, we could go on about this for a while already, but when we take that concept of humility that you're mentioning, when you eviscerate it and you get daiva,
Yeah.
then it's, to me, it's a swara that you end up with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
In any sense.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
In the dark.
Oh, in the dark. Yeah. The Gemara says in Maseches Yuma, you can't compare somebody who sees the food, somebody who doesn't see the food. If it's pitch dark and you're eating, it's completely not the same experience. That's why the Chazal instituted the mitzvah of Shabbos candles. Because Friday night everybody would have a meal, and it would go into the dark, and it would go into the night, and it was pitch dark. Before Thomas Edison, there's no lights. So they instituted Shabbos candles because it's a whole different Einik Shabbos when you're sitting in light and you see the food. You also see the people. It's a whole different experience.
Monsey, we
Huh?
electric goes out every so.
Yeah. I was once in the country, in the Catskills, and right before Shabbos, my wife lit the candles, and there was a huge blackout. So here, in cities more, especially in Brooklyn, even when it's there's always a lantern here and a light here. It's more you don't have real darkness. But over there in the Catskills, it was surrounded by forest, and when it was dark, it was dark. There was no tower, there was no building, there was no truck, there was no car. It was really dark. It was pitch dark. And the candles were burning, and we sat down to make Kiddush. So I told my children, finally, we can appreciate why the Chazal made a mitzvah d'Rabbanan to light Shabbos candles. Now we could finally feel it. Every Shabbos, it's an extra light, but it's not essential. L'chayra. But tonight, you could see the fish, you could see the wine, and it was a very good educational experience. There's nothing like hands-on experience of an idea, of a concept.
Have lights, you do a candle, you don't need it.
Right. Well, there's always discussion if you can use a flashlight.
Right.
You could use a flashlight. For the holes and crevices, why not a flashlight? There are those who argue you could use a flashlight. It's not what we do, because the Chazal said you should use a candle. And they learn it out from Sukkim. But it's a discussion.
I'm saying, but in the olden days, they didn't have lights.
Yeah, you also have to understand, they had very small homes. Most people had very small homes. If you had 2 bedrooms, you were pretty rich. People don't realize, even in the 1800s, I don't know if you went to a home that they lived in the 1800s, you had 1 bed for 10 people. You know that, yeah? You had 1 bed, literally for 10 people.
Brooklyn, Chinese,
I remember this.
Soviet Union. Rich, because she had her own bedroom. Her own house is rich, yeah. Yeah.
Israel, you still see 1 bedroom apartments, you have 10 kids.
Yeah. Meir Sharim, but the younger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable, right? Yeah. It's crazy. They had 1 bed and 10 people, and they wouldn't sleep in the length. You couldn't have 10. They would sleep in the width across the bed. And so I once asked somebody he gave me a tour, and he said they liked it that way because it was so cold outside. When you had 10 bodies smashed against each other like sardines, it was essential. It maintained, it generated so much heat. It was a machaya. They loved it that way. Whatever, it's hard for us to understand. We live in a different milieu.
Everybody wants their own bedroom today.
Today, if you share a bedroom with your sibling, is already... Yeah, walk-in closets. One for the husband, one for the wife. The walk-in closet is bigger than the whole house used to be. So when you send b'dikas chametz, also there was no surplus of food. No such a thing. You have frozen pizza in your freezer, and you have a pantry with 10 bottles of vodka, and you have cake, and you have cookies, yeah, and you have downstairs another freezer, right, with more frozen pizza, and more cakes, and more knishes.
Nothing to sell.
The surplus that Baruch Hashem, that we have, they didn't even have. You had bread for a day, it was already, you were already above average. I'm saying people don't understand. So with famine and hunger is not part of our vocabulary, let's face it.
As we throw out food.
Yeah. The last few years, more people have died from obesity than from hunger. Never existed in the history of the world. More people should die from obesity. I'm talking in civilized countries. I'm not talking about where there's, unfortunately, a lack of food. But in places where there's food, much more deaths from obesity. And I think relative in the whole world, it's that way. So that's an unbelievable phenomenon. It's an unbelievable phenomenon. Yeah. More deaths from obesity than from famine. Who ever heard of such a thing? You know how many people died from famine over the centuries? A famine would come and wipe out community. And it wasn't hard. If there was no rain one season, right? If a thief came and stole the crop, if there was a locust, if one family's field was with a scorched, whatever, and then the families did that, what are they supposed to do now? There was no shul to go to. There was no... when we learn in Gemara about all the institutions of tzedakah and tamchui, right? They used to give people 14 meals for a week, or they would give them meals themselves. People don't understand the revolution of it. You know, today with food stamps, and even somebody who's very, very poor, you have some access to food. Yeah, we don't understand it. In the times of the Gemara, Chazal, when they instituted these things for poor people, it was revolutionary. That basically nobody would starve. Yeah, but I'm saying it's hard for people to appreciate what it meant. What it meant. What does it mean to go with your children for 3 days without food? This was a common thing. It wasn't. It was unfortunately a very common thing.
Crap would go. They wouldn't go to something. They needed.
The families themselves. Every family had it.
You can give out.
Yeah. It wasn't like you went to a shul and you had your kiddush in the morning and you had soup. That was the chiddush of the tzedakah, tamchoy, gaboy tzedakah. I'm saying it wasn't. We take it for granted because even when we give tzedakah, most of the people, Baruch Hashem, they're not mamar starving.
They without tzedakah, they couldn't even survive.
No, you would die. You would die. You know what happened in the Ukraine, and what Stalin did in the Ukraine, because they didn't want to give him all the crop.
I have a married daughter who lives in Edmonton, Canada. And I was there for Sukkot. There was a nurse who had worked for the Eskimos in northern Canada. She said that they have a tradition. Every family picks one child and they fatten up their child as much as they can. It becomes a real family. That child has a chance of surviving.
Wow.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.